This course is presented to you free of charge by TTJ Tech Services of www.ttjtech.biz and by Stir It Up of www.stiritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U, not an I, so that's STURITUP.com. TTJ Tech Services and Stir It Up are pleased to offer this course to you to the glory of God and to the benefit of all those who listen. We'll hear more from trainers Cliff and Sarah a little bit later, of course. But we're going to get started with Messages. Now, the Messages app is the app that allows you to send and receive what we traditionally would call text messages, right? If you're brand new to this, you might be confused and think, well, is that email messages? Is that voicemail messages? Well, those all have their own place, right? So voicemail messages are found within the phone app. We already looked at that before. Email messages are found within the Mail app. It's the Apple Mail app. It's just called Mail on your home screen. And those kinds of messages are emails, but they live within that app. So when we just talk about the Messages app with the actual name of Messages, we are talking about text messages. Now, it's no longer just text messages, though, right? Technology's come a long way, and there are different kinds of text messages. And, you might say, well, is this really important for right out of the gate when I'm just learning about messages? Do I really need to understand the different kind of messages? Well, it's kind of important because it's going to make it easier if you do to know why maybe certain features work in some cases and not in others, right? And so we're going to describe a little bit what this is all about. And we're going to talk about the different kinds of messages that this app can handle, first of all. So there are 4 basic message types. And you might technically say 5. Some might call it 3, right? We could get into that whole, nuance, but I'm going to just go with 4. And I think that will explain it. And actually, I guess you wouldn't have 5, but some people might say 3 or 4, whatever, okay? So the first kind of message that the Messages app handles is iMessage. iMessage is my personal favorite. It's the most robust. It's the best of all of them, and it is only for Apple users, okay? So it's Apple device to Apple device, meaning if I have an iPhone and I am texting Cliff and Sarah, that will be iMessage because they also have iPhones, right? Most of my family, in fact, all of my family, we all have iPhones, and even the extended family, right? And so anytime you're texting with Apple users, it's iMessage. Now, technically, there could be an exception to that. If somebody has an Apple device and has iMessage turned off, but why? Right? Or maybe you're in an area where there's low cellular signal. The cellular data is not that great. You're not on Wi-Fi. It might default back to an older message standard in those cases because it really does take cellular data to use iMessage. But nevertheless, this is in my opinion, the best messaging standard that there is. Apple iMessage, every feature that we talk about in the Messages app is available to iMessage users. There are no limitations. You can send large file. Well, there are file size limits, but you can send large file attachments. You can send any kind of file over iMessage. So it's not just plain text, right? You can even format your text now in iOS 18. You can add special message effects. You can send money. You can send stickers, animations. Apple calls them Animoji and Memoji. We'll learn all about that, right? There's so much that we can do with Apple iMessage. And so if you are communicating with another Apple user, and it doesn't have to be an iPhone, it could be iPad, it could be Mac. and of course Apple Watch as well, or even somebody's HomePod, which kind of works through the iPhone. But nevertheless, that's all iMessage. That's all going to be Apple iMessage. Okay. The next, and by the way, if you can see when you are um, looking at an iMessage conversation, it is denoted with a blue colored bubble. Okay, so the message bubble for the person that in the conversation sending you the message, it is the color blue. Voiceover will actually announce that it is iMessage, so you won't have any issue knowing either way. Now, the next one we'll talk about are the green bubbles, and that is your what we would call SMS and MMS. So that's why I've divided that into two. SMS, short message system, that's the original text message, right? That's just a plain old text message that dates all the way back to prior to the existence of the iPhone, when people used to have to type their, like you'd press the number 2 3 times for a letter C, and you'd press, the number 3 twice for the letter E, and all those kinds of things, right? You remember that? Well, that is even back then, that was SMS messages. There's a lot of restrictions there. There's a character count limit, so after a certain number of characters, it used to not allow you to send. What the iPhone actually does, if it's sending SMS, is that splits it up. So if I type something that is more than I think it's 250 characters, then it will just send it as 2 or 3 messages, something like that. And that is not the only limit, right? SMS is strictly text. You can't send photos with SMS. You can't send file attachments, none of that stuff, right? It's just plain text. Then we have MMS, which is the multimedia message, and that is an improvement, albeit a very slight one, on the SMS, right? So MMS allows for group messages. Now, of course, iMessage allows for very powerful group messages, right? But we're talking about the basic non-Apple kind now, right? So MMS allows for group messages, which SMS did not. Okay, so if you send a message to a group of people who are not Apple users, even if it's just text, it'll become an MMS, okay, because it's a group message. It allows for the sharing of photo and video attachments, and a very, very limited number of other attachments. I'm not even sure if it's maybe just audio, or I know it's not, like you can't do PDFs and stuff like that. It's very basic, just a few kinds of file attachments. So as I said, it's an improvement on the SMS, but only a slight one. Now, the fourth and final type of message that has come into existence in recent years is RCS. RCS is the Rich Communication System. And this is once again, an improvement upon the SMS and the MMS. And it's actually a pretty substantial improvement. Okay. It's still not nearly as powerful or as good as iMessage, right? iMessage is still going to be the best. iMessage is, end-to-end encrypted, all these features, all these wonderful things. Well, RCS is close. It gives you a lot of benefits that you didn't previously have with SMS and MMS. One of the most obvious improvements is that it actually now shows you when someone received your message or when they read your message. You can do that. You've been able to do that with iMessage for years, and now they can do it with RCS. And I think RCS has typing indicators. RCS increases I think it probably removes the character limit entirely. And I think it does increase the kinds of files that can be sent and received. And so there are some different benefits, some significant benefits to RCS. I'm going to have to Google what color the bubble is for RCS, because I don't even remember. And so you have these 4 kinds of messaging standards, right? iMessage, RCS, SMS, and MMS. And I don't expect that, if this is your first time, I don't expect you to remember those, or, we're not going to give you a quiz on what the differences are, right, in each one, and those kinds of things, right? The reason I'm telling you this, as I said from the beginning, is that if you find that certain features are not working in a certain conversation, then maybe you'll know why. Or when you go into an edit field, you hear it say text message SMS, or it might say text message RCS or something. You'll know, oh, well, that's the more powerful one. I can do more things with that, right? And so the question naturally arises, how do I choose and how do I let my phone know which kind of message I'm going to be sending? The answer is you don't. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to get concerned about it. All you want to do, if you're curious about it, is go into settings and then go into apps and go into messages and just make sure they're all turned on, right? So right near the top, there's an iMessage toggle, and it should be on by default. And it's going to show that you're signed into iMessage with your Apple account. Remember, iMessage does not use your carrier text messaging system. It uses cellular data or Wi-Fi. And so you just make sure that's on and that you're signed into it. There are other settings there that we may get into later, either as an advanced session or just if people have questions about it. But, make sure that's on. And then you don't really have to turn SMS on because it just is there. It's a carrier feature. MMS, I do believe, can be turned on and off with most carriers. And then RCS, now there's a new toggle to turn that on as well. So you just make sure everything is on. And then what happens is when you compose a new message or when somebody sends you a message, your phone will know, or your iPad, whatever device you happen to be using at the time, will know what is the most appropriate message type to use, right? So if it detects that the phone number that you're messaging is an Apple device, it's going to use iMessage for that. Or if it's somebody that has an Android device, it will use RCS if that's available. If it is not, it will default back to SMS. So you always are able to see that in the message edit field. And that's really all we need to know about that. It's going to happen on its own. You don't have to be concerned about it. All right. So I told you that we're going to learn a new predictable pattern today. And really, it's not new, actually. It's going to remind you a lot of the settings app. This is what I would call a list app. And what I mean by that is not that you keep lists in it like your grocery list. That is reminders. We'll learn about that later. But what I mean is that the app is set up in such a way that it appears as a list. And in this case, it is a list of message conversations, if you have any. Now, some people don't keep their conversations, they delete them. And, that's okay. But I have a bunch of them. I hardly ever delete conversations unless they're like spam texts or something of that nature. And so a conversation is the back and forth between two people or between a group. So if I send a message to Sarah and I say hi, and then she replies and she says, "Hi, how you doing?" And I reply and say, "I'm doing well. How are you?" And she says, "I'm good." All right, this all becomes one conversation with the same person. And so you will see the list of conversations in the Messages app. And so if we're being technically correct, now a lot of times people interchange these terms, and that's okay. But if we really want to be technically correct about it, the conversation is the thread, it's the back and forth, right? And then the message is an individual message within that conversation. So whenever I said hi to Sarah, that hi is one message in the conversation. And when she replied and said, "Hello, how are you?" or whatever, that is another message within the conversation, if that makes any sense. Let's go ahead and make this a bit more practical. And I have my phone here, and we're going to open up the Messages app and show this to you. Now let me get out of the app that I was in, and then let me raise the volume here. And you'll see that there is a badge count.
Safari, music, messages, 2 unread messages. Double tap to open.
I think you can hear that okay. And that said 2 unread messages. So I've got a badge there. And I may have received those during this class or maybe before that. But I'm going to open up this app now. We know how to open apps by now, right? Okay.
Messages. Edit button.
And you might remember this predictable pattern where there's an edit button on the left, top of the screen, and a compose button on the right. That's exactly what we have here. Listen, upper left.
Edit button.
And what does that edit button do? Well, we're going to look at that later. That is that's going to give us several options. It's going to allow us to edit the way our name and photo look, so our contact poster that's being shared with people, what they see, if they can see the photo, those kinds of things. It allows us to edit other aspects of the Messages app and the Messages experience, and it even allows us to multi-select. If we say, well, I want to delete these 7 messages, right now, you can multi-select by going into that edit button, and so we'll show you that a bit later. Now, if this is your very first time launching the Messages app, you may not be taken directly to the screen that I have. You may be given an introduction to Messages, like what we call an onboarding or a splash screen that gives you some basics about Messages. The other thing you may be asked to do is to decide if you want to share your name and photo, and you can customize how your name looks, and even whether you use a photo, an emoji, a monogram, different colors. You can customize all this, and we will get into that probably a little bit later. I'm not really sure that that's a day one kind of Messages exercise, but we'll show you around some of that. And it is very beneficial, and it's a lot of fun. You can play with it. You can decide how if you have a monogram, in what color, and all these sorts of things. And basically, we'll talk more about that later, but you might be presented with that, and you can just swipe left and right and follow the prompts if you want to do it, or if you want to say not now. You can always go back and do those things in settings later. It doesn't have to be done right now. It's not going to go away. You'll be able to do it later. So if you want to just get past it for now, a lot of people do that when they're just learning. The other thing I would tell you, you might be prompted as to whether or not you want to send read receipts. In other words, people, especially iMessage users and RCS users, they will get they'll be able to tell when the message was successfully delivered to you. But you can also enable a feature that lets them see when you have actually opened and read their message. And so that's up to you if you have that enabled or disabled. Usually you're prompted with that. And again, if you're not, or if you change your mind, you can always manage that in settings. And there might be one final prompt that you get, or there could even be a couple, I suppose. It might ask for location access and so on. But one of the other prompts that you may get is to whether you want to enable shared with you. And shared with you is a feature that, again, we're getting a little bit beyond the basics here when I talk about this, but shared with you is a feature that allows you to see a sort of a unified location with everything that's been shared. So if somebody sends you a message that has an article and they say, hey, check this article out, and somebody else shares a link to a product on Best Buy or Amazon or somewhere, and they say, check this out, right? You don't have to scroll through the conversation endlessly, what seems endlessly, to find what's been shared. Instead, you can go to the shared with you section, and what'll happen is you'll be able to see all that stuff there. So you can enable that. There's other things, but you get past these prompts, and eventually you'll get into this screen that we have. Okay, let's go and look at what is next. I mentioned that at the top right, upper right-hand corner of the screen, we have, and that's just what we remember. I told you, you remember these things because there's oftentimes this predictable pattern, right? Upper right corner of the screen often has this sort of new or compose, this plus button, and that is that's exactly what's there. So if we swipe back to the left,
Messages. Heading.
we get the Messages, the title of the app, and just to its left, of course, is the upper left corner of the screen,
Edit button.
that edit button where we started. So if we go to the right now,
Messages. Heading.
just one finger swiping, and now what do we expect to see?
Search field.
Exactly. We expect, and there's a dictate button.
Double tap to start.
That's part of,
Tap with 2 fingers.
that's part of the search experience, right? So we can search by typing. We can double tap in that search field. Remember the search field? Listen again.
Search field.
Okay. And that is your edit field. If you double tap in that, it brings up an on-screen keyboard. You can search for messages and so on. And then just to its right is the microphone. It says dictate if you'd rather search with your voice. And we know that the on-screen keyboard also has a microphone button, a dictate button. But this is even without having to even bring up the keyboard. You just have this little microphone icon. VoiceOver calls it dictate. And so you don't even have to open the search field to do that. Now, if we continue swiping to the right, what we're going to get now is this list view.
Dictate. Conversations. Kylie. Pinned.
All right. And you heard it say conversations. This is our list of conversations. It could be, 4 conversations. It could be 400 conversations, right? It's however many you have, unless you delete them. By default, they stay on your device until you remove them. You can change that in your settings, but that's the default. And what we're seeing now, the first thing we have is my pinned conversations. Now, a pinned conversation always stays at the top of the list. And so you can pin up to 9 of your favorite and most important people and conversations to the top of that list. And so really you're pinning the conversation because you can have, especially in situations with groups, you can have separate multiple conversations. But when you have one person, then it's one and the same. It's going to go to that same conversation. And you can have up to 9 of them pinned here. This way, no matter who else sends a message to you, no matter who else you're texting, you will always see your pinned conversations at the top of the list. So I have my family up here, and I've got a couple friends that I regularly am either texting to make plans to go to lunch or something. My pastor. I have 9 of them, and even a family chat group, and I have a kids chat, which the kids chat was actually born of back in the 2020 pandemic days when the kids were home, and for a while everybody was home, and then eventually my wife went back to work, but the kids still were working from home, doing school from home. And sometimes we text each other. We're in opposite parts of the house for whatever reason, and somebody says, what do you want for lunch or whatever. And I didn't want my wife to have to get all those messages while she was at school. Now we've kind of used it more of if we want to have a surprise for mom or whatever, we have. But so I have the family chat, which is all 4 of us, and then the kids chat. And notice that my daughter is the first one on the list. She did that. She put her pin because you can you can reorder these pins in whatever order you want. So she put herself at the top of the list there. So I left it that way. But so so you can hear as I swipe to the right through these conversations now. Okay.
Conversations.
And you hear that there are custom rotor actions. We know what the rotor is now, so we can talk about that. We have custom actions. Let's see what they are. So what we have now is we have this list of conversations I was starting to show you.
Jessica,
and we'll do it again.
Conversations. Kylie, pinned. Swipe up or down to select a custom action, then double tap to activate.
And I'd like to do the custom actions just to show you what they are if we swipe up or down with one finger.
Drag Kylie. Delete. Hide alerts. Mark as unread. Unpin Kylie. Activate default.
Okay, and you heard that activate is the default, so if I just double tap without swiping up or down, that's what's going to happen. Now, the other options there, of course, we won't go into all the details about those right now because, again, they're a bit more advanced, some of those things, but you did hear delete as one of the options, so you can delete this entire conversation. There is another way to delete individual messages within a conversation, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, so we'll just, but you can delete an entire conversation from the rotor. When you hear delete, you just double tap then with one finger. So these are the custom rotor actions, but notice it said that this conversation was pinned. So as we continue swiping to the right,
Carson, pinned. Jessica, pinned. Family chat, pinned.
All these conversations that I was telling you about that are pinned at the top, and they will always stay at the top of the list in this order. Now, I can reorder the pins, as I mentioned, if I choose to, but otherwise, we're just going to have the the same 9 pins there, and then when I swipe past all of those,
Pat, Fred, Met, 2444147. Unread, Chili's. Get the $6 witch's brew before it leaves 10/31.
Okay, so I got a message. That was one of the 2 unread messages there, just a promotion from Chili's. And I could delete this, I could do whatever, but I'm just going to double tap it. That will, I don't even really have to, because if I swipe down,
Pen, mark as read.
I could mark it as read without opening it, but I will just open it, so I'll do the activate.
Messages, 2441.
And now if I tap the upper left corner of the screen, where we would expect there to be a back button,
1 unread, back button.
Notice now there's only 1 unread message. So upper left is the back button. Again, that's a predictable pattern. We'll double tap that.
1 unread, back edit button.
And now, let's see what we have. There's another message that was unread, and I'll take care of that one. Actually, I don't know that it's what I thought it was. Let me see. Maybe it's, no, where's the unread message? I might have, oh, I know where it is. I was going to say I might have to ask SIRI, but no, I found it. It's here. And it was another, it was from Xfinity letting me know they, my automatic payments. So anyway, we have several of these here that are short codes or phone numbers. But if I go further down the list, then there's ones from actual people that are in my contacts as well.
Cliff, on Edward Valbrecht, Matt. I know that 989, Pat, Lynn, Dana, +1, Saturday.
There's group messages and
Mom, Rick Hall, Saturday.
All these different messages. And so what happens is that any one of these that you want to open up, you just double tap it. And so let's say I want to open this conversation with Cliff I just ran into a moment ago. Where was it? Here it is. This is Cliff. Okay.
Cliff on DC,
and it reads the last message, but it also tells me what time that was received. It says 12:16 a.m. So I can double tap this to open up the conversation.
Messages. Cliff on DC, the categories on Mac, 12:16 a.m. Swipe up or down to select a custom action, then double tap to activate.
Where it actually put me was on the most recent message within that conversation. But if I touch the upper left corner of the screen,
back button,
I find the back button. Now, this is
and I was just about to point out that that's where it's important to double check your messages, because that was supposed to say the categories are not on the Mac, but of course I didn't check it and sent it, and it said whatever it said, DC on Mac, or it didn't say category, so.
Right. So always a good reminder to proofread your messages, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. So that is, we're inside now of a message conversation. And what I will do is, if I want to compose a brand new message instead of using an existing conversation, we would have used that compose button at the upper right corner of the screen, and I will show you that in a moment as well. Okay, but I'm in a conversation right now, and so I don't have to compose a new message. I'll be able to just reply to Cliff without having to start a new conversation. Incidentally, when it's one-to-one like that, not a group conversation, but just one person to another, if I were to create a new message or a new conversation with Cliff, it would actually add on to this existing conversation anyway. So even if I had used the compose button and, searched for Cliff's name that way, it would actually append to this conversation. Now, when you're inside of a conversation, you can swipe left and right to go through all of the messages in that conversation. If it's a really long conversation, if you never delete your conversations, you will be better off to use the 3-finger scroll gesture, swiping up and down with 3 fingers, because that will get you much more quickly to earlier parts of the conversation. And what you'll notice happening is that the conversation will appear to grow. In other words, like right now, if I put my voiceover cursor on the latest message,
Cliff, someone on the
okay,
Cliff, on DC,
and there's that one.
Cliff, on DC, the categories on Mac, 12:16 a.m.
If I swipe down.
Swipe up or down to select Acosta Cliff.
If I swipe down with 3 fingers now.
Page 6 of 7.
It says page 6 of 7. Well, there are more than 7 pages in this conversation with Cliff, I guarantee it. But watch what's going to happen as I keep swiping down.
Page 5 of 7. Page 4 of 7. Page 10 of 14. Page 9 of 14. Page 8 of 14.
Did you see what happened? We went from 7 to allegedly 14 pages, and I guarantee you that's not even all there is. There's way more than that. But it just doubled, so you can just, if you need to go to earlier messages within the conversation, you just do that 3-finger swipe down, or, back up to go to the later ones. There is usually also, and let's see if I can find it here, near the bottom of the screen. And let's take a look. Is it there? Yes, there is. Okay. There's another on-screen element we will learn about now, which is another way to quickly get to earlier parts of a long list or a long page, and that is the vertical scroll bar. It's near the bottom of the screen, and what it is it's something you can just, if you are a sighted user, you can just kind of drag your finger along it and slide it, but with VoiceOver, it is the 1-finger swipe up and down, and if you are listening to it, you'll hear it changing by percentages. So listen to this.
Vertical scroll bar, 14 pages, 100% adjustable. Swipe up or down with 1 finger to adjust the value.
Now, notice it's adjustable, so that means that there's an adjust value option in the rotor, and we're already on it. Remember, we talked about that before? So if I want to go to an earlier part of this conversation, I just start swiping up with 1 finger, the percentage will decrease.
90%, 80%, 40%, 30%.
And now if I just sort of swipe or touch to the left, middle of the screen.
Saturday, October 19th at 4:36 a.m., heading level 1.
Notice it took me back to the 19th, which is a little over a week ago, and so it took me to those earlier conversations. So now I can use the vertical scroll bar again down near the bottom.
Cliff, vertical scroll bar 100%.
And I'm back at 100 because I swiped down and I had sort of touched. Depending on the app, it may stay at the higher point of the screen or it may not. But this is another way we can quickly move through long conversations. Now, if I want to begin to type another message to Cliff within this conversation, all I have to do is touch with 1 finger sort of near the very bottom center of the screen, and it will...
Message, iMessage, text field. Double tap to edit. Use the rotor to access misspelled words, mentions, text effects.
As you heard, it will put my VoiceOver cursor on the message field. That's the edit field, and it is not open right now. It said double tap to edit. So if I want to begin to type in that message, I have to double tap there, and it will bring up the edit field, to bring up the on-screen keyboard.
Insertion point at end. Text field is editing. iMessage. Insertion point at start.
Notice it said iMessage, so it tells me that it is an Apple iMessage, not an SMS or an RCS or something. Notice also that the position on the screen now where you will touch to find that edit field is going to be slightly higher than it was before because the on-screen keyboard is now taking up the lower, I don't know, maybe not half, but the lower portion of the screen. And so if I type down where I tap down where I tapped before, I'm going to get the keyboard.
Space.
See that?
Use the rotor to access.
The on-screen keyboard takes up that bottom portion, and if I bring my finger up, what I would consider to be just not even halfway up the screen, but right in the middle, notice that.
The message text field is editing. iMessage.
I will find the edit field, and when I'm in when I'm in that edit field, notice it says is editing now because it's already open, so I can begin to type. But let me just show you what is to the right. If I swipe to the right of the edit field,
dictate button.
There's a dictate button. Again, that's not to be confused with the microphone icon on the on-screen keyboard down near the bottom. This is just another way. They've just made it easier. If you want to dictate, you can do it that way. Your magic tap still works also, 2-finger double tap to start and stop dictation. But remember with magic tap that it depends entirely on where the focus is. Remember we discussed the voiceover cursor and that you need to have the focus in the proper place. So the magic tap will only work if your focus is really, I like to say, on the on-screen keyboard, and not even in the edit field. It should work in the edit field also, but I like to be extra sure. So if I were going to dictate, I'd probably do this. I'd probably touch the return key.
Return.
Now I know.
Use the rotor to access misspelled.
Okay. Now I know that my focus is on the keyboard. I can 2-finger double tap, and it will definitely start and stop dictation. But let's go back up to this edit field.
Message text field is editing iMessage.
And I just want to swipe to the right. Remember, dictate was first.
Dictate button.
And to the right again.
Cap I. D. I'm.
There are 3 suggestions here, quick type suggestions or predictions as to what I might want to start my sentence with. I'm, and the word the, T-H-E. And so if I double tap one of those, it gets inserted automatically, and the predictions will continue. But if we go to the right again.
Open text effects button. Cap Q.
And then you're on the keyboard.
Back.
So you have the open text effects. We will look at those in a little bit. Then you have the Q, because that's the first letter of the keyboard, right in the top row. Q-W-E-R-T-Y, remember? Okay, back to the edit field.
Cliff message text field is editing.
What if we swipe left instead of right?
Apps button.
Okay, there's an apps button that looks like a plus symbol for those who can see it. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. What that does is it opens the app drawer or the app bar with a whole bunch of message apps that we can use if we want to send money to someone, if we want to add a sticker, if there's all kinds of things we can do. Depending on what apps you have installed, third-party apps even get iMessage apps as well. So we will look at some of those a bit later. Let's go to the left.
Messages, Cliff, on DC the categories on Mac, 12:16 a.m. Actions available.
And notice that has actions available too. So if we swipe up and down with one finger.
Tap back, reply, add sticker, copy, translate, more, drag, activate, default.
All right, again, not going to look at all these right now anyway. We'll look at some of them, but never forget what I've always said. We're trying to strike the balance between teaching apps and teaching voiceover. And this is why we have experience labs, because we'll incorporate a whole bunch of stuff on Wednesday that we don't get to today. I'm not going to sit here and, do a whole bunch of things that you're not going to remember anyway. So let me just say that there are actions with each message in a conversation, so you can look at those. And then to the right.
Vertical scroll bar.
And then
apps.
Back to the apps button. All right, so if I want to start typing, I'm in the edit field already. We already opened that up, so I have my keyboard
Cap T
on screen.
Cap T T.
And I can just
type
the word test. And what we'll do is we'll tap the edit field.
Message text field is editing test insertion point at end.
It says the insertion point is at the end. If I double tap repeatedly in this edit field, I can toggle the insertion point between the beginning and the end of the edit field. That's how that works with edit fields.
Insertion point at start. Insertion point at end.
Right? So you can quickly move back and forth. We've shown you that before. We also can use the rotor, and probably it is, well, actually, let's put the focus on the return.
Return.
And let's
use the rotor to access misspell.
Let's see what the rotor's on. If I swipe up or down with one finger.
T.
Okay.
S. D. Cap T.
Remember, I was at the end of the edit field, so swiping up with one finger is moving me backwards by character. The rotor was already on characters. I can keep swiping backwards by swiping up. There's nothing else there, because all we typed was the word test. If I swipe down with one finger.
Cap T. E. S. T.
Right? Now let's say I want to say this is a test instead of just test. Well, let's swipe back up.
T. S. E.
Okay.
Echo.
The insertion point is right before the E and right after the capital T. Now, we're going to learn more about that in the coming weeks. We have a session or two dedicated entirely to what I like to call advanced editing, and it's going to make it very clear where the insertion point is, how you know where the insertion point is, how you select text. We're going to cover text selection. We're going to cover fixing spelling errors. We're going to cover all those things in the coming weeks, but not right at this particular second. But just know that the insertion point is exactly where I want it, because I can use that capital T that's already there, and I can add an HIS to make the word this. So
HIS space this.
This
IS
is
space is a space a.
Now I need a T,
T.
and now I have the word test.
T
So
message text field is editing. This is a test. Character mode. Insertion point at end.
that gives me...
Use the rotor to
Let me
access.
just pause that. That gives me the ability also to try to show you we can navigate by words with the rotor.
Words.
Backwards.
Test A is this.
Forwards.
This is A.
And notice that I stopped. I want to show you something. Instead of it saying the insertion point is at the beginning or the end, listen to what happens if I tap in the edit field right now when the cursor and the insertion point is just after the letter A.
Cliff message text field is editing. This is a test. Word mode. Insertion point between is and test at the 10th position.
And notice,
Use the rotor to access.
because I'm in word mode, it says the insertion point is between is and... What did it say?
Message text field is editing. This is a test. Word mode. Insertion point between is and test.
Between is and test, because the A, I guess, is where I'm actually at. But if I want to see that more refined, I can set the rotor
Characters.
to characters.
Message text field is editing. This is a test. Character mode. Insertion point between A and space at the 10th position.
See, now it
Use the rotor.
tells me exactly where it is. So you can determine that. You can change your rotor setting. And when I'm ready, I can just send this message, just a swipe to the right from the edit field.
Send button. Send using iMessage. Double tap and hold to add effect.
It reminds me again that it's going to be an iMessage, and it says double tap and hold to add effect, so I can use that long press gesture to add message effects, but I won't do that this time. This time we'll just send a plain old message. Let's double tap.
Send message.
And
Dictate.
there it
button.
went. Now if I look at the conversation,
Your iMessage. This is a test. 2:59 p.m.
swipe to the right,
Delivered.
Delivered.
Level 3.
it shows me that that message was delivered. Now, if I wanted to compose a new message instead, and I'll use this time we'll do Sarah, and so when I go to the upper left,
Back button.
I find my back button.
Back button.
Now,
Edit.
upper right is compose.
Compose. To text field. To text field is editing. Character mode.
It puts me in the to field. Now, let me be quick to say, I already have a conversation with Sarah in here as well. So even though I'm telling it to start a new message, really, it is going to append to or add to. I'm sure you can hear my cuckoo clock way better now because of the original audio there, original sound. But it is going to append to the existing conversation that Sarah and I have with each other. But I just want to show you what it's like to create a new message in case you don't have a conversation with somebody. Now, if you swipe to the right of this to field,
Add contact button.
there's a button that says Add Contact. And this is one way to add people to the to field, because you can just look through your entire list of contacts and double tap on the one that you want. This is not the way that I prefer to do it. The way that I prefer to do it is just back in this
To text field is editing.
edit field. I think I just got a
New message.
notification there maybe. No. Okay.
Button to add
Anyway,
to cancel.
so,
to add contact.
Notice there's a cancel button to the left.
To cancel button to text field
But
is editing.
I like to just start typing the first few letters of the person who I want to message with. So we're going to use the,
S
just type an S
A
and an A. And now what I'll do is I'll bring my finger up to the top half of the screen and I'll start swiping right. I'll touch kind of the upper left.
to text field is editing. Saw
It says I've typed saw. I swipe to the right.
add contact button.
There's still that add contact button, but look to the right now. We're going to get search results, and these continue to update as you type more letters, so you can further refine your search results. But listen.
Results. Sarah Potok, +1.
And there she is, and I won't let it read her personal iPhone number, but there it is, and it would read it to me, so I know it's the correct method, because maybe I've got different phone numbers in there, email addresses, and if I want to change which one I use, let's say that I have a work number, an iPhone number, a home number for her, and let's say it has picked the one that I don't want, so I could swipe up and down on her name here.
Expand options. Activate default expand options.
And I could choose expand options. I could double tap on that, and it would give me all of Sarah's contact options, and I just double tap on the one that I want. So we're going to leave it alone, and I go to the right.
TTJ instructor chat. Sarah Potok and Cliff Antonio Miller Sr.
There's a group conversation if I want to send to the group instead of, because that also, her name is in there, so it came up as another search result.
Sandy Hall. +1.
There's other contacts that start with SA, so I'm just going to go back to the left.
TTJ Sarah Potok plus
and double tap.
2 text field is editing.
Now you notice that I'm in an edit field again that says 2. So if I want to create a group conversation, I can repeat that same process by typing the first few letters of another person's name, right? We can do the same thing as many times as we need to add multiple people. And if we don't have them in our contacts, we can type their 10-digit phone number here or their email address, whatever it's going to be using. But notice if I swipe to the right of the edit field now,
Sarah Potok +1.
It has her phone. It has her in there as one of the people that I'm sending to. If I were to not have an existing conversation with her, that would be all I'd see, except then I'd see an edit field where I can type a message. In this case, if I move my finger lower down on the screen...
Messages. Your iMessage. Sarah Potok. Absolute.
See, we have messages back and forth with each other already. But remember where that edit field is, down near the bottom of the screen.
Space.
It's not really where we want to be because we still have the 2 field open, so we have a keyboard. So remember, up a little bit, not quite halfway probably.
Messages. Message. iMessage. Text field. Double tap to edit.
And so
swipe up or down.
I'll double tap.
Insertion point at end. At message. Text field is editing.
Now we're in this edit field with Trainer Sarah, so I can say, this is a test just like I did with Cliff.
Cap this space.
Whoop, hold on. And
space A.
If I type something wrong, it will autocorrect probably. Let's see if I try to type
TRAT.
Let's see.
Test.
Yep, it fixed it. See, all I had to do was press the space bar. Now I knew it was going to autocorrect because I heard a little bubble sound. If you're concerned that it's not going to autocorrect to the correct thing, to the right thing, you can bring your finger up to the edit field and start swiping left or right, and you will see which one is selected that it's going to correct to. But I was confident that even though I typed TRAT, that it was probably going to autocorrect to test. And so I was confident enough that I went ahead and pushed the space bar. You could push space, return, a punctuation like period or comma, and it will announce what it auto-corrected to. So I know it did put test in there. I can read it back.
Message. Text field is editing. This is a test.
And
character mode.
It's entirely correct. So I can delete this space out of there that I put in there.
Space.
And now let's look near the edit field.
Test. Suggested. Undo. Trat. Send. Button. Suggested. Trat. Undo. Test. Testing. Tested. Open text of
right, so it's got different options because it's showing me that it suggested one, but it already corrected it. I can undo that, and so you have all those options up there, right? Or I can pick tested or testing by just double tapping. But we have what we want. This is correct.
Message. Text field is editing. This is a test.
So again, I can just send.
Send button.
Swipe to the right.
Send message. Text field is editing.
And now what's happened is if I go back.
1 unread. Back button. 1 unread. Back button.
There's an unread message. Why did I not get a notification sound? Well, because I have do not disturb on while I'm teaching. So, probably Cliff responded to my message to him.
2. Rita plus 3. Megan. Fred. Pin. Megan. Sarah Potok. +1.
No.
415.
Actually, it's not. It is another message, totally unrelated, but it's unread, and we'll just
messages. Back button.
Get out of that. Okay. So yeah, that's why I didn't get a notification because I have a focus mode on called Do Not Disturb. But we sent the message to Sarah.
Molly, Pat, Fred, Megan, Sarah Potok. This is a test. 3:05 p.m.
And to the right is that message I received.
+1. 415.
And then to the right again.
Cliff, this is a test.
And there's the message to him. If you let it play, it reads the time.
Cliff, this is a test. 2:59 p.m.
Right? Again, if we want to double tap any of these, or if they send a message to me, I just double tap it and it opens it up, right? Now, this is texting at its most basic. This is enough to get you to where you can...
Message received from Sarah. Hello.
Now, that one came through because I just texted her, and so probably when you just text somebody, it bypasses that. You can also put people in emergency bypass or favorites, or maybe I even have her in. I think I might actually have Cliff and Sarah in as exceptions to the do not disturb, that maybe they can get through anyway. I don't even remember, to be honest with you. It's been such a while ago that I set that up. But either way, it came through, so praise God, you got to hear a message notification. If I were not in the Messages app, that would appear as a banner, which we've already taught you about. You could touch near the top of the screen to read it again, double tap it to open the Messages app. You could long press it to get contextual options. But since I'm already in the Messages app, that didn't happen. Instead, I got the notification, and it's just here in my list.
Jessica, Sarah Potok, unread. Hello, 3:07 p.m.
So I'm going to double tap that to open it.
Messages. Sarah Potok, hello.
It nicely and helpfully put my voiceover cursor right on the most recent message, which was the reply from her. And notice, too, it was the same thing. Now, if somebody sends you a really long message, it may not read the whole message unless you open the conversation, right? So some people think, well, I don't have to open it. I can just listen to it from the... Well, there's two things that happen if you don't open it. One is, if it was really long, you may miss part of the conversation. The other thing is, it's just going to keep appearing as unread unless you mark it read. My daughter used to do that. Whenever she was younger, she'd get messages and just read them from the notification center, and then I'd look at her device and it would say, 37 unread messages. Well, she just wasn't opening them, but, she obviously, that's different now. But so you double tap this and it opens, which we just did. Now I'm going to, since Sarah sent me a message, I'm going to send her what they call a tap back. Now, a tap back is just a little gesture that indicates that I have received the message and I can share how I feel about that message. There are some predefined expressions you can tap back with, like you can give a thumbs up, which is a like. You can give a heart, which is a love. You can give a laugh, a thumbs down, or a question mark. But then, now in iOS 18, you can actually tap back with any emoji that you want. And the most recent ones that you use will become part of the list. That list will change as you use different emojis. But also, you can search for and find any emoji that you want. And I might be wrong, but I think you can even use stickers and memojis and all those sorts of things. And so when you do that, you can tap back with anything you want. So before I do the tap back, let me show you that instead of saying delivered, it actually shows me that she read my message because she has the read receipts on. So listen to this.
Your iMessage. This is a test. 3:05 p.m.
Now, if I swipe to the right,
read 3:06 p.m. Heading level 3.
It actually tells me that
Swipe up or down.
Sarah read that message, and then here's her reply.
Sarah Potok, hello, 3.
So I'm going to just swipe up or down with one finger to get the tap back option.
Tap back.
There it is. And I'll double tap on the tap back.
Tap back bigger, heart, button.
Now we can swipe to the right.
Double tap to react to message. Swipe up or down to select.
Okay, I'll swipe to the right.
Thumbs up, button, thumbs down, ha, exclamation mark, question mark, button.
Now let's see what else it offers me.
Face with tears of joy, red heart, face with heart-shaped eyes, unamused face, okay hand, button, smiling face, button, add custom emoji reaction, button. Message, add custom
emoji reaction, so I can pick one of the other ones, anything in my list. I can search, or I can pick one of these. So I will give her
tap back bigger, smiling face, okay hand, button.
Let's do an okay hand. I'll
double tap to react to message.
Double tap with that.
Down. Messages. Sarah Potok, hello. You reacted with okay hand. 3.
And notice it tells me that I reacted with OK hand, and she would hear that same thing. If she tapped on it on her end, she would get a notification. So that's what we call a tap back. That was an opportunity to introduce to you another feature. And that's a nice feature to just, quickly. Now, let me be clear. That is different from, I just want to explain this since we now can tap back with any emoji at all that we want to. That is different from putting emojis in the conversation, in the message itself, right? So if I wanted to put a smiley face in the message, like if I wanted to say, "Hi, Sarah," and then put a smiley face, that has to go in the conversation. And you have that little globe icon, remember, down at the bottom of the screen there by near the space bar, and you can bring up the emoji keyboard. That's different. That is when you want the emoji to be part of the actual message that you're sending. What we did here instead was a tap back with an emoji, so it makes it look as if it's a reaction to the message that the other person sent you. And in fact, Voiceover used to call it react or reaction, something like that, all the way through iOS 17, even though technically the name of it is tapback, and it always has been tapbacks since it was introduced. But Voiceover used to call it react or reaction, something like that. In iOS 18, they've brought it in line with what it's actually called, and they say tapback. But it's the same thing. It's just now we can tap back with anything. We're not limited to those 4 or 5 that we had there. So if you want to look at the message that Sarah sent me, or any message that you received, you have custom actions on it. You already saw that tapback is one of them. And remember, custom actions just means I have my rotor set to actions, which it will default to if there are any custom actions. And then I swipe up or down with one finger to go through them. So
reply to activate default.
There's activate. If I swipe down,
tap back, reply, add sticker, copy, translate, more, drag, activate default.
And more is going to give me an opportunity to there a second. Okay. I gotta just okay. More is going to that is a very, very cute thing. My little Yorkie, and normally she's not quite, she always likes to lay by me. She actually came right up and crawled up on my lap as I'm teaching here. That was so cute. I guess she wants some attention and some belly rubs. We can do that while we're teaching, can't we? So when we went to the rotor there, you heard that there were different options, and that more option would bring up a choice to multi-select the messages within a conversation. Remember how I said earlier that we could delete an entire conversation when we were in the list of conversations? And I said to you, there's a way to delete individual messages within a conversation if you need to, but we're not going to go into that right now. Well, now I'm going into it just enough to tell you that it exists under that more option. When you've brought the focus to an individual message in the conversation, if you choose more, one of the options is going to allow you to select individual messages within that conversation and delete them if you need to for some reason. Now, again, we still haven't even begun to scratch the surface of everything that we can do in the Messages app, and some of it we'll do today yet, and most of it we'll save for Wednesday as a part of our Experience Lab, because what I want you to do is I want you to get a feel for this stuff and play with it on your own. And we're going to have a lab project on Wednesday that allows us to do that. And so we'll be able to try all kinds of different things, right? Let me just very quickly show you a few examples. Remember, we can only teach so much, and at a certain point, it becomes overwhelming, and you're not even going to remember it anyway, right? So let me just show you a few examples rather than step by step here. Let me
16 p.m.
Okay, so let's look at
messages, back button, FaceTime, Wednesday.
Okay, well, that's an interesting thing to do, too. Let's look at the top of the message conversation here.
Back button.
Back, and what if we swipe to the right?
FaceTime, button, Sarah, button.
We have 2 buttons here.
Tap for
we have FaceTime, so I could quickly start a FaceTime call, and that's super convenient when you have group conversations, too, because group conversations, which I'll show you in a minute, You can start a group FaceTime. You can do audio or video, and that's the same thing here. And I just got a message from Sarah where she put the emoji in the actual conversation.
Sarah Potok, grinning face with smiling eyes.
Okay, so you see how that works. Now, the other button I had up at the top here
Sarah button
is her name, and
double tap for additional contact options.
It tells me double tap for additional contact options. There's so much we can do here. We can call her. We can, well, let me just show you. Let's do it.
Done button.
There's done, but go to the right.
Conversation details. Sarah Potok. Call button. Video button. Mail button. Info button.
Get her contact info.
Request location button.
We can share location, request location.
Share my location button. Show and shared with you. Switched button on.
Remember.
Double tap to toggle setting.
Remember shared with you? I mentioned that to you. So she's turned on for that. If she sends me, or I send, well, I guess it would be if she sends me an article or something, it's going to show up in the shared with you section, so I don't have to search the whole conversation for it.
Content shared in this conversation will appear in selected apps. Pins will always show.
Pins will, okay, and your pinned conversations, anything they share will always show up. So it's not even that I have to be in this app, right? If she sends me a news article, I'll be able to find it in Apple News. I didn't explain that very clearly before. So let me just review that. Let's say that over the course of a month, Sarah has sent me a news article, a website, and even maybe a song in Apple Music. Well, I can open up each of those apps respectively. Like, I can open up the music app instead of having to go into messages and say, when was it that she sent me that song? I just open Apple Music, and there's a shared with you section in there, and anything that anybody's shared, Sarah, anybody else as well, has shared with me a song, they will show up there. And the same thing with the web link in Safari or the news article in Apple News. So it makes it very, very easy to find this stuff, and I didn't really thoroughly explain that before, but that's what shared with you does. Now,
hide alerts, switched button, off.
That's off, but
double tap to toggle setting.
If I wanted to, I could hide the alerts, and that means that I wouldn't get notified. This is useful if you're in groups that become very, very chatty and you don't want to get all the all the notifications from that group, right? We have a group with our cousins that and it's there's my son and daughter and 3 other kids in that group, the cousins, and then the family, right? And that group will go from being silent to, their little 7-year-old sends a photo, and then everybody's commenting on that photo, and then she's responding. And so, in a matter of 5 minutes, you'll have 27 messages in that conversation and the notifications to go with it, right? And I don't mind that. That's fine. But there may be cases where you don't want to be interrupted like that. And so those group conversations, it's very useful to be able to hide the alerts. And if you're mentioned by name or with a hashtag in your name, you will be notified anyway. And that's a setting you can also disable, but by default, even if you hide alerts for a specific conversation, you will be notified if you are mentioned by name. It's also an important feature to know about in case you accidentally do it, right? Because I've had people say, oh, I'm not getting alerts from such and such a conversation. And then if they can see there's a little mute symbol, an icon that shows that it's not, and that's what they've done. They've hidden their alerts inadvertently. So here's the option in the conversation with Sarah to hide those alerts if I don't want them.
Send read receipts, switched button, on.
I can customize that per conversation.
Share focus status, switched button, on.
I can customize that per conversation, and what that means is that if I have a focus on, like, do not disturb, it will show that to her and say that I may not receive, or I won't receive her messages right now. And I think if you send another message within a 2 or 3 minute period, it will break through that barrier anyway.
Links, heading.
Now here's a section of the conversation where she sent me links. I can see all.
From Matthew Grayson Volbrecht, TTJIOS, from Matthew Grace.
They're not only links that she sent me, they're links that I sent her. So you have this gallery view of links and photos and articles and again, things that we might have sent each other. Now I'm going to go back up to the top.
Sarah Potok, done, button.
I'm going to hit done. I just wanted to show you that because that was one of the things that we didn't look at yet. Another thing I'll show you is, let's take a look at the apps. Remember message apps. So
message, iMessage, text field.
Double tap to
Double
edit.
tap to edit.
We're not going
Use the
to.
rotor
We're going to
access
swipe to the left instead.
Mention apps button.
And let's double tap apps.
Camera.
The first one
Camera.
is camera.
Double tap and hold, then drag to reorder menu items.
You can reorder
Swipe
these.
up or down to select a custom action, then double tap to activate.
And your custom actions are just
Dismiss. Activate.
okay.
Default.
So there's the camera. So if I want to take a photo or video right now and insert it directly into the conversation, I can use the camera from within the Messages app in the conversation that I've chosen. I hit apps and then I find camera. What's the next one?
Photos.
Photos.
Double tap and hold.
So that is if I want to send an existing photo or video. Okay, I would use apps and I would choose photos. What's next?
Stickers.
Okay, I can send and receive stickers with people. So I could send a sticker.
Apple Cash.
Apple Cash. That's if I want to send or request money to the person that I'm messaging at the time.
Audio.
There's audio.
Double tap.
And this will allow me to record an audio message. This is not to be confused with attaching like a voice memo or something, right? That's different. That's an attachment. This is an audio recording that will go directly into the message. And by default, when a person opens it and listens to it, it automatically deletes itself after 2 minutes. But you can choose to keep it. You can even choose to share it and save it outside of the Messages app once you've kept it. But you can, all of these things are customizable as well. And again, the audio message, we can communicate back and forth that way with audio. Now, what else do we have?
Send later.
Send later.
Double tap and hold.
One of my very favorite features. This just came out in iOS 18. When Apple announced this, because I've actually been wanting something like this for years. When Apple announced this, I said at that moment, I don't care what else they put in iOS 18, you had me at send later. That to me was worth it all. And I use that feature almost every day. So what this does, just as its name suggests, is it allows you to send a message at a specified time. And we did a demo of this on YouTube in our Apple iOS playlist, which, by the way, got 2 new video uploads today for iOS 18.1. We showed you how to use the writing tools with Apple Intelligence, and we introduced you to the brand new Siri with Apple Intelligence. So those are both there in that playlist on YouTube. Not the VoiceOver in and out playlist, but in our iOS and iPad OS and more playlist, which is specifically for new features that have been released this year. So anyhow, in that playlist, I demonstrated the send later feature already, but the gist of this is you can send later to one person. You can even send multiple messages to the same person and specify them for schedule them for different times. You can, of course, do it with more than one person as well. And so we will actually demonstrate this in a moment, okay? But let's look at what else is here.
Image Playground.
Now,
Double tap and hold.
that is a beta feature. I can't talk about that right now, nor can I even demonstrate it right now, which even if I wanted to, which it would violate the non-disclosure agreement, so I wouldn't. But even if I wanted to, it's not. I don't even have access to it yet. You had to get on a waiting list for that. That's coming hopefully in iOS 18.2. But Image Playground is going to be a really cool feature that's going to allow you to basically type a phrase like puppy dog wearing a pink bow and eating a birthday cake or something, right? And it will generate an image of that, what you've described. They're cartoon images, which has been done deliberately by design so that they don't look real, because they don't want you to do something malicious or misleading, right? If you were to pick your least favorite political candidate and put them in a clown costume or something, they don't want people doing that and deliberately misleading people with it. So the images that Image Playground will generate will be like either cartoon, or they'll look like they're hand drawn or sketched, or these kinds of things. Again, hopefully we'll be able to show you that by the end of the year. So hopefully by the end of this class, before Christmas. If not, definitely in a cafe and in the iPad class. in the spring. But nevertheless, that's there. It's one of the apps I'll eventually be able to use. And right now, of course, I don't have the access to it yet. So what else is in there besides those things? Let's see.
Image store.
Okay, then we'll go location.
Hashtag images.
So location has to do with sending your location now, and hashtag images. Again, these are different images you can find.
Bible. Check-in.
Okay, so my Bible app that I use has an iMessage app for it. You can send, I think, probably scripture verses and so on. The next one you heard was check-in. This allows you to create with a family member or something, a check-in when you get home. You say, okay, I'm leaving now and I should be home in an hour. Check in with me. You can follow me. You can see that I got home. And we could just keep looking through this list of apps.
Digital Touch, Fandango, Fly Delta, Food Network, Memoji, Music, Open Table, Pandora, Paramount Plus.
Right, I mean, I could just keep going. And not all of these are native Apple apps, but many of them are. Music, Digital Touch, Memoji. A lot of those are native Apple apps. Maybe on Wednesday we'll demonstrate Memoji and Animoji because they're a lot of fun. Animoji is like you can take your own facial expressions. You can sit there and you can pick like a monkey or a chicken or a robot face or something, but then it mimics what you do. If you smile, if you stick out your tongue, if you blink your eyes, all these things, it will incorporate that into either a sticker or a video, and then Memoji are these animated representations of people. So you might create a Memoji for yourself, for your family members, whatever, and you can customize what they're wearing and their hairstyles and all of these things, and even piercings and everything. And again, then you make your facial expressions, and it looks like the Memoji is making that expression. So maybe we'll demonstrate that on Wednesday. But if we want to get out of this app drawer, what we'll do is a 2-finger scrub, and that 2-finger scrub is going to be the way you get out of that. Now, I'm going to do just a couple more demos before we go to questions here, right? And then we're going to cover more on Wednesday, and we'll have our experience lab on Wednesday. I want to, I'm not even going to do group conversations today. We are going to do that Wednesday, but the thing about that is that's going to, there's so much we can talk about there with iMessage groups especially, right? We can name conversations, we can do all those sorts of things. But let's just do 2 more quick demos for today. Let's say that, we've all heard that Cliff is getting this new job. He's moving for that today. So maybe I want to tell him congratulations on his new job. So I'm going to go back to that conversation.
Back button. Megan, Sarah plus 2 plus 104.
Okay, wait a minute.
Cliff, this is message, iMessage, text field is editing.
And we're going to type congratulations.
And
it should know the word soon.
T-U at ions.
Yep, notice it said add ions because I typed the L. If I just press the space bar.
Space, congratulations.
It put the whole word in there. I didn't even have to type the rest of it. That's an inline prediction. Let me get the space out of there.
Message, text field is editing. Congratulations. Character mode.
All right, so we'll hit send here and see what happens.
Send button. Send full screen effect. Multicolored confetti cascades from above. Your iMessage. Congratulations. Message. Text field is editing.
What in the world just happened? Well, they're called message effects. And certain words and phrases, if you type them exactly, will automatically trigger such message effects. So, congratulations is one of them. And it brings up the confetti. Well, you heard VoiceOver describe it, right? And then there's happy birthday, which brings up, I think, like the multicolored balloons. And there's Happy New Year. And there are different ones that you can type different phrases like that. And congratulations, happy birthday. Maybe trainers Sarah and Cliff will help me remember some of the other ones. I think there's one for happy, maybe like Independence Day or something, 4th of July, something like that. There's definitely like a Chinese New Year. If you type the word pew pew, it will bring up lasers. And so these are automatic message effects that you can send to people just by typing a word. Now, you also can manually put any effect that you want from the available list of effects, of course, onto any word or phrase or sentence or message. If you remember that the send button said double tap and hold to add effect, that's where we would do that. And we would double tap and hold the send button instead of just doing the normal double tap. And it will bring up a menu of options, and there are two kinds of effects, bubble effects and screen effects. These full screen ones, like the balloons, the confetti, those are considered screen effects. You also have bubble effects that let you...
Message received. Messages.
And I just got a message back, and it was...
Delivered. 1 unread. 1 unread. 2 plus. Megan. Sarah Potok. Unread.
And I think hers is going to be a full screen effect also.
Sarah Potok. Unread. Happy birthday. 3:32 p.m.
Let's double tap on that and see what happens.
Actions available. Messages. Full screen effect. Multicolored balloons float up from below. Sarah Potok. Happy birthday.
There you go. And I don't know if you can hear it over Zoom. Maybe you can with original sound, but I don't know. But definitely when I received that, or when I sent Cliff's message, it made sounds too. Like I could actually hear the confetti, or I could hear this little sound for the balloons, and my phone even vibrates a little bit. It gives you like a haptic prompt, or
Sarah is typing.
A vibration. Notice it says she's typing.
Sarah Buddy is typing.
And so she's
Swipe
typing.
Up or down, vertical scroll bar. Buddy is typing.
We'll just wait in the conversation.
Swipe up or down to select a custom action, then double tap to activate.
We'll just wait in the conversation to see what she's going to say, but that's the way that works. And we will show you more of those on Wednesday. I'll do custom ones where I'll choose the bubble effect or the screen effect by doing the long press on the send button. We'll
Sarah's full screen effect. Fireworks burst and fade over a black backdrop. Sarah Potok, Happy New Year. Your iMessage.
Now,
sorry.
I'm sure you heard that one, because with original sound, those fireworks were loud enough that surely you heard that. So, and again, you get a little vibration. And so this is a lot of fun to play with. It really, really is. Okay, the last demo for today, and then I promise we're going to do more of this on Wednesday along with our experience lab. So it'll be a hybrid session again, both teaching and lab. But I want to do one more today, and that is that send later, my favorite feature. I also on Wednesday, by the way, will cover, and I'm saying this out loud so that we can all help each other remember, and also so that you know it's available to do. It is possible to unsend messages that you've sent in error, and it's even possible to edit messages that you've already sent within a certain window of time. I'm going to cover that on Wednesday. Okay, we're not going to do it today, but we are going to do it Wednesday. So let me just tell Sarah thank you for the message here.
Message.
And
iMessage.
I'll
message.
Send it later.
Capped 8 7KS.
Now,
thanks. Space.
Okay, I've said thanks. Instead of hitting send, I'm going to go into send later. Let's see what time it is.
3:34 p.m.
All right, I don't want her to receive that till 3:37. So we're going to go in here
Apps button.
to apps and say
Camera. Send later.
Send later. Double tap.
Camera.
Now, what it does, down near the bottom of my screen, it has 4 pickers here.
7 today. Picker item.
The first one, and you just swipe up or down with one finger to change these. The first one is the date, and it's already set to today. That's what I want.
7 o'clock. Selected.
Okay, not 7. We're going to go back to 3.
3 o'clock. 3 of 12.
I just did that by swiping down repeatedly. Let's go over here.
36 minutes. 38 minutes.
We're actually going to do 38, just to make sure we give it enough time.
PM.
And then there's the PM and AM picker. So
PM. 38 minutes. 3 o'clock. Today. Picker right. Send. Button.
Just to the left, I just double tap send.
Send message. Send dictate.
Notice
button.
It made a little sound. Now I'm going to go down here.
3 o'clock.
My pickers are still up, so I scrub them away. Two finger scrub them away. Now, notice
you're up today. 3:38 p.m. Edit button.
There's an edit button associated with that 3:38. This hasn't sent yet, so I can change my mind. But here,
your iMessage. Thanks. 3:38 p.m. Vertical.
And
your today. 3. Send later.
You see, it shows me.
Send later.
So it's going to send. I can leave this conversation.
3:36 p.m.
And while while we're doing other things, that message will just automatically send. I'm telling you, I use this almost daily. Especially with my wife, because I might think of things that I want to tell her in the morning when she gets up, and I'm always up really late, so I don't want to text her when I'm going to bed, 4 something in the morning. I'll wake her up, but I want her to see it at maybe 7 o'clock in the morning when she gets up, So I'm telling you, I really, truly, one of my favorite features of all in iOS 18. I can't even express how excited I was when that feature came to iOS this year. We've covered a ton today, and yet there's so much more to cover with messages, right? So once again, Wednesday, you don't want to miss. But I want to go to Cliff and Sarah now, and we'll make sure Cliff isn't in the same boat there. Now, I know he may have to be silent, though, because he might be in the process of moving. But Sarah, you should be able to unmute now whenever you can.
Hi, thanks. I did receive your message. It came through.
Awesome.
Just as I was sending you a message. Yeah.
Okay, good. So there you go. So send later works very well. Any other comments on today's session?
I don't know if we already went through this. Did we tell people what the Z scrub is? It's the, two finger. I know you said 2-finger scrub, but it's 2-finger swipe.
Yeah,
Right, left, right.
You bring up a good point. I think we did, but let's just do it again in case we didn't, because I did mention it today. You're right. So in case we didn't cover this, folks, the Z scrub, they call it a Z scrub or a 2-finger scrub. I don't think you really have to be concerned about making a Z. I'm still not sure if I know what a Z looks like, right? But the gist of it is to put 2 fingers on the screen and to scrub quickly back and forth. Like I sort of do it in a. I picture it here on my phone. I hold my phone in front of me. I kind of do like I put one finger above the other and then sort of do it in an up and down motion. You could do a side to side motion. What I like to tell people is it's sort of like if you got just a little tiny spot on a table, you were eating something and maybe you dripped a little bit of jelly or something. There's just this little spot, and you take a washcloth or a rag, and you just very quickly scrub just that little spot. You're not scrubbing the whole table, you're scrubbing that little spot. And that's kind of how I envision the scrub. And if you do it about 3 times, that will show VoiceOver what you're trying to do. And that is oftentimes a back gesture, a go back, or a get out of the thing that I'm in right now. But a lot of times there's other ways to do it. But in that situation that we used it today, I think we did it twice. We did it when the send later pickers were up, and we did it for something else, I think, too. I don't even remember what, but it is pretty much the only way to do it. Oh, it was the app drawer. It was the app box.
Yeah.
That's where we did
Yeah.
it too. And yeah, that's pretty much the only way to do that. To get out of that is to do the Z scrub.
Sometimes, if you're stuck and there's no back button, you absolutely have to do that. And that is your back button. That is your get out of jail free, the Z scrub. Yeah. I mean,
Yep.
and what you said is completely right. You can Z scrub horizontally, vertically. You just, and if it doesn't work the first time, do it again.
Right.
It's inexact.
I think the thing to help with that too is to keep the phone in the other hand so it's very, very stabilized. If the phone starts moving while you're scrubbing, VoiceOver is going to misinterpret that gesture as something else. And so
Right.
one of the things that I think a lot of these gestures that people may run into trouble with, if you use the other hand, so you're holding the phone in one hand and not just leaving it on a table or something, it's you're probably going to have better success with it.
It's also kind of fast.
Right. Yeah, it
Like you
is.
can't just drag your fingers, 1, 2, 3, and then the other way, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you have to do it pretty quickly. Practice just like the rotor.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the Messages app is, yeah, I think I always thought I had to go to the apps go, back from the text message. I had to go back in order to do the back tap. I didn't know that you could just swipe up and down on the message.
Oh.
Yeah, I always went back to not always, but well, the apps icon hasn't always been there, has it?
Well, no. I mean, it
But
was a few years ago, but I think they've changed some things about it in some of the recent versions.
yeah,
And the way it works. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So that's all I have, I think. But yeah, I love the Messages app. It's kind of everything. My father kept asking me, why? Why do you need the text messages? Why can't you just, you know, make a phone call or send an email?
Well,
But yeah,
that is a funny thing that you just brought up. And I really never thought about things this way until I was doing a presentation at my daughter's school, at Kylie's school this spring. They wanted me to come in. We did a Titanic day, and for those who don't know, I'd written a book about the Titanic. I've always been sort of borderline obsessed with the Titanic ever since I was a little kid. Anyhow, so they had, Kylie had told her teachers that. And so they had me do this whole Titanic day right before the end of the school year, like the last week. And one of the things that I did as part of that whole day, we had a bunch of different activities and all this sorts of stuff. But the one thing we did was uh, a, a video that we had. I found a video on YouTube that showed, and I didn't show the whole thing to the kids because it would have been like a half hour. I only did like 2 or 3, 4 minutes of it. But to watch the whole thing was actually really eerie and really, really chilling, because what it was the actual conversation between the Titanic as it was sinking and the other ships that were, hopefully going to come and rescue the people. And so they did it in some of it in, actually, I think it was more than a half hour. I think the video was the last like hour and a half to 2 hours of the Titanic's life yet. And they did in real time, and you'd hear the Morse code, and on the screen, you could see the messages that were going back and forth. But the interesting thing about it was the anxiety that must have been there, because they knew the situation they were in. But then this would have been made even worse by the fact that every message that they sent, you had to wait for somebody to respond to it, and you had to hope that someone was hearing it. And oftentimes with Morse code, it would get, jumbled with other messages and stuff too. So that was a problem. But, the whole idea was you had to wait for somebody else to respond to you. And I got to thinking about that, and I thought, it's so funny because in society, and I like the Messages app so much. I mean, I use it constantly. And you want to quickly, say something to somebody, you just text them. And I do it too. And I'm 100% in favor of that. But I also think in some ways the real-time interaction of a phone call, obviously an in-person visit if you can, but at least a phone call is still actually a step above that. And yet we've gone to this thing that really is not all that different from what they did in the early 20th century in Titanic's day. I mean, sure, now you can do it around the world. On Titanic, you had to be within, a couple 100 miles, and you obviously couldn't send cash or, photos or something by Morse code. But I mean, just the idea of that, I just find it fascinating. I'm not even really taking a side with it as if there were one to be taken, but I just find it interesting, that we do that now.
Also, we're so spoiled because we have it. Like, I mean, I don't even remember when we didn't. Right. And that was not that many years ago.
Oh, no. Well, I remember
So,
do you remember when text messages used to cost something because
yeah,
your messaging plan didn't include, you maybe got like 200 text messages a month or something, but then you had to pay like, I don't even remember what it was. It was like maybe a quarter per text message, but then it was like $1.25 if you sent a photo or something, like all of these things that have changed. It's crazy.
And we were also limited, not that long ago, we were limited to a certain number of characters.
Right, which they still are if you use SMS. Well, we're not, because it'll just create multiple messages in a row, but yes.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So
I
like being spoiled, but
very interesting. It is. It's really interesting.
Thank Thanks for joining today's session. Didn't get your question answered? Have an additional comment or feedback? Email us info@ttjtech.biz or info@stiritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U. That's STURITUP.com. Or check out our websites for additional resources. That's ttjtech.biz or stiritup.com. And remember, subscribe to the newsletter when you're there. That way, you don't miss out on any upcoming announcements or events. Thanks for joining us. God bless, and see you next time.